Welcome to Legislative Updates. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with my co-host, John Barker. As you're watching this today, of course, John's on your left, and in between us is Chris Croft. Chris was here a few weeks ago, and appreciate you being here, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
And, of course, the premise and the objective of all of this is to get you quick and accurate information from the legislature. So it's Friday afternoon. John comes in and usually has a guest with him, and they talk about what's going on in the legislature, share it with us, so you're not reading an article in the newspaper that may be somewhat accurate, somewhat inaccurate, and you get the information straightforward. So, John,
right.
I know you just finished what last week we talked about turnaround. So turnaround has started.
It has. We completed it last night about 6:30. I got out of the Capitol about 8. But just to give the folks an idea of what we did, this is Monday, this is Tuesday, this is Wednesday, and this is Thursday. These are all the bills. We passed 63 bills out, because turnaround means all the bills that are in the House of Origin, all the House bills, had to be out, and then they transfer over to the Senate, and the Senate sends all their bills over to the House, other than the exempt committees. So we've had some long days. I was pretty sympathetic to some of my colleagues who are sitting up in the balconies on the hard seats. But we did get quite a bit accomplished. A couple of things that are really, I think, important is, the last few weeks we've had that really cold spell. Natural gas prices just went out above the roof, out through probably to another planet. They were so high. Well, the cities that have their own gas, they are the gas providers.
They're the distributor.
They're the distributors. The small cities got hit really hard. Denison, the city of Denison up in Jackson County, normally they put in their budget $125,000 a year. Their bill for the last 2 weeks for $235,000. Roger Holcher, who's the city manager in Marion, which is in the district, he called me and he said, "John, we can't pay this. It's 3 times more than we had programmed for the year." So, if companies are running that, they can float a loan and then level it out over a year or so. Cities can't do that. Some cities we're talking about unincorporating and taking bankruptcy because they can't pay it. So we were able to get a bill out, put $100 million in it from what we call idle funds account. We got it out of committee. We ran it on the floor that morning. We put it in a Senate bill, which would make it easier to get across, and ran it on the floor, passed it out. I think it was 123 to 0. What it does is we put $100 million in it to allow those cities to get a low interest rate loan from the state, so that they can also level it out over a year or 2 years, and possibly 3 years. But there's some federal investigations going to take place into the gas industry because how that spiked. And in Texas, people are getting, a couple of $1,000 gas bill for a month. Yeah. And so I thought that's when the House and the Senate and all of state government works efficiently. We were able to get it out of committee, run it on the floor, get it passed, get it over to the Senate. They ran it on the floor, they passed it, and the governor signed it that evening. Good. To make that even. Good. So that was a good deal.
And the good part about that, John, as I'm listening to you here, is it's not the government picking up the tab and taxpayers paying for it. It is a low interest loan. So it gets paid back into that fund.
It does. And
it helps the cities get through it now, and it avoids putting that additional amount on the taxpayers.
Yeah, it does, and it's it's a long-term solution to a short-term problem, because some cities will probably have to roll that over to 2 years or possibly 3. But I'd like to find out why the gas prices shot up that much.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking of that when you were talking about it.
Yeah, and one of the other bills I thought was been my favorite bill the last few years when Chris and I were on tax was the Senate Bill 80, Senate Bill 13, which is the tax transparency bill. And a little later, Chris and I can talk about that and explain exactly what it does. But it's a good bill for taxpayers as to property taxes, and that's where we get most of our complaints from people about property taxes. And it won't fix the problem, but at least it will be transparent. So hopefully we'll talk about that in the next segment. And other than that, we're off for like 3 days now.
Well,
so.
I bet that feels good.
Feels
I know you
good.
told me about it. And you're watching Legislative Updates. We're going to cut away, take a break. And as you're watching this, that's John Barker on your left from the 70th District, and in between Chris Croft from the 8th District and from Ottawa. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Legislative Updates. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with my co-host, John Barker from the 70th District. That's John on your left. As you're watching the screen, in between is Chris Croft. And I said that Chris is from Ottawa. Well, he may have been there a lot, but he's actually representing Overland Park. And so, John, a lot of interesting stuff we've been talking about so far. So, what do you want to talk about now?
Oh, I thought we would talk about Senate Bill 13. It came out of tax. Both Chris and I have been on tax before, so we have an interest in that area, and it's a property tax transparency bill is what we're calling it. I mean, property taxes, when you go out and talk to constituents, they always complain about property tax and how it goes up every year. And so, because they never raise the mill levy, but they never tell you that property values go up, so that those authorities, taxing authorities, they always take that money and then they come back and say, well, we didn't raise your mill levy. Well, there's two ways of getting taxes, through valuation increases or mill levies. So with this bill, if your prior year's budget, whatever you used that year, and that's what we call revenue neutral, anything above that, whether it's through reevaluation of the properties or through a mill levy, that authority, which whether it's the county commissioners, city commissioners, or whatever, have to send a notice to all the property owners to say, hey, we're going to be raising your property taxes, and then have a public hearing on it and a public vote from that county commissioners or city. Now, when it came over from the Senate, it had a big loophole in it. It exempted out school districts. Well, in the last 5 years, 50% of all property tax increases came from school districts. So we included the school districts, where they would have to follow the same as the county commissioners, city commissioners, because sometimes, we just recently got our reevaluation. I think everybody in Dickinson County did, and it went up. But then I look at all the taxing units that are on some of my statements. You get taxed by the cemetery district, different school districts. I own a farming operation, so some of the properties in one school district, one's in another, and then the disparity between the school districts as far as the mill levies. So I think this is a good bill, because taxpayers on real estate will be able to see all of that, and then when those authorities, county commissioners or school boards or whatever, are going to ask for more money, they just need to be transparent.
And actually have public meetings.
And have public meetings and public notice that your taxes are going to increase. Is that about right, Chris?
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, in Johnson County, if I remember correctly, I think 75% of the properties had an increase in valuations this time. So, I mean, and I think what this bill does is it took off the, there was a cap, right?
Yeah.
There was a lid. That's what it was called.
Yeah.
There was a lid.
So
it took the lid off.
We took, because the county commissioners complained about the tax lid, we took that off.
Right. So it's gone. But the lid had so many holes in it, it really didn't matter. Now this thing takes the lid off, but now it opens it and shows it, and so at least it's out there for everybody to see. It's transparency, like it said, and that's the good part about it. And then people, they can look at their elected officials and they can talk to them and say, hey, this is what you're doing, and they see everything now. And I think that's the value of this bill. I think it's a really good bill, especially how they amended it.
Yeah, and they added everybody.
Yeah, everybody.
So that's a good thing. And then Chris you got your bill passed.
I did. So I think last time we were talking about my bill, right? Mm-hmm. It was 2066, and it's about occupational licensing. And so we had a lot of discussion. I think we had around 150 hours of negotiating time on this bill. Just going through the dynamics and talking to every organization to trying to see how we could, one, make sure we weren't making any mistakes as we're going along, that we didn't have any unintended consequences. But in the end, we made concessions, we got it through. And so now what you have is this is about growing talent in our state. We're trying to grow. We had over 30,000 before the pandemic. We had over 30,000 licensed occupational jobs that were unfilled. We're the 5th highest outward migration state in the nation, outbound migration state. And that's according to a United Van Line study. So, I mean, people are leaving. They're not coming here.
Why?
Well, I mean, you could argue it's taxes. I'm sure there's a variety of reasons. But it's taxes. It's an environment that doesn't necessarily support the business growth. You know, and look, I know a lot of people don't own businesses, but they do work at businesses. And this is about jobs. And we're trying to create jobs in this state and bring people to the state and get them to work. What we want them to do is
keep them.
And then keep them, right? But, I mean, right. And so there's a lot of things we have to do. So this is one step in the process of getting them there. And this was really an important process, not just from that perspective. You know, so you're a working professional in another state, and we're going to recognize that when you cross our border, that you're still a professional, that you still have knowledge, skills, and experiences, and that they're of value to us. And how do we compare those against what we'd like you to have in the state and your scope of practice? And you come in here, and if it works and it's similar, then you get a license. If it's not similar, well, the boards have an opportunity to give it to you. And then if you're unsafe for the public health and safety, if you jeopardize that, then they have the right to deny you a license. So we protected everybody, went through the process. Here's the unique thing. From a military perspective, there is potentially going to be another round of base realignment and closure, the BRAC. This bill is one of the key things that the Department of Defense said they are looking at to make sure, and they're going to use that in their evaluation process for the next round of BRAC. Us passing this bill puts us on a higher level than many other states out there for this. And we need that. We've never had a BRAC really in this state. It's been 13, we're one of 13 states that haven't. We have had 3 closures, but they were all pre-BRAC. So we don't want to get hit with this, and this really does a good job of helping out with that. So we got it through the House, 103 to 21. Now it's over in the Senate, and they're going to work it this coming week. I'm excited. They're moving it fast because they want to get us all ahead of the curve.
Yeah. All right. That's an interesting one. I want to follow up with you a little bit about that to see how that affects with the military. I think I know the answer, but we'll see. You're watching Legislative Updates. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Legislative Updates. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with my co-host, John Barker. And in between us in the middle is Chris Croft from the 8th District out of Oberlin Park. And it's Friday afternoon. Both have come in from the legislature and are kind enough to stop by and give us information about what's going on because, boy, I find it useful. John, you wouldn't know this because I hadn't told it to you, but we have our grocery store next door. We're in Chapman right now. And so I was going through to get some stuff this morning, and a guy that was down stocking the shelves because this is restock day. And he was telling me, he said, "Is John coming in this afternoon?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "The show, the Legislative Updates." And I said, "Yeah, John's coming." He said, "I love it. I just love it." And I thought that was pretty cool.
I get a lot of emails from people that watch it, and and then a question that I may have raised and not fully answered, they'll ask me to answer it fully, and I'll do that. But I think it's the best way to get our message out to the constituents. It's pretty fast. We tape it on Friday, and we usually get it out by Tuesday. And and people don't read newspapers like they used to. But they watch TV.
Yeah, and John always puts up his website information. So if you have questions, you can contact him. And I think that's tremendous because people have questions and he'll never tell me, and I can't find him, and that's not true. John will answer the phone, and if he doesn't answer it right then, he'll call you back.
Yeah.
So, Chris, we were talking about before we cut away to break, to explain a little bit more about what you were talking about, how this affects the military families coming in.
Okay. Yeah, so the bill applies to military members, spouses of military members, and veterans and their spouses. So it applies to all of that. This bill was actually built, that was already in existence. What this did is it really solidified it and it sped up the process. So you're a family member that's coming in, or you're a military person or family member, you're coming to Kansas. You can apply before you get here. You're already a working professional. You can apply for a Kansas license. knowing that you're coming here, you have your orders, you can move on, you can come on. There's no requirement, just you know you're coming. So you apply, you turn in all the stuff that you need, you get a completed application, it's done. Within 15 days, you're going to get notified whether they're going to give you a license. Now here's the unique thing. Because the military doesn't get a choice in coming here, you're being told by the nation, this is where we want you to go serve. We have it in there where if it's a similar scope of practice from where you are to here, you get a license. If it's not so similar, but you're still going to get a license, but it's probably going to be a temporary license. And they're going to give you some restrictions and probably give you a few things, but you can still go to work and provide for the family. You can help out. And then eventually it will become, once you finish all the checklist. However, if there is still that thing out there that if you jeopardize health and safety, then the board has the right to turn it down. But for the military, it's unique in there that you're going to get a license one way or the other unless you're unsafe. You're going to get a license of some form so you can perform and help out with your family.
And you're right, that's huge because of military family coming in. And, well, I'm licensed in Kentucky where we were, but I'm not in Kansas. How long is that going to take? 15 days.
Right.
15 days.
From the completed application.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
15 days for it, and I'll be working just like I was in Kentucky because I was licensed there. I think that's tremendous. I think that's a great idea.
And now for all others, right, it's 45 days. So it's still faster because before it had been 9 months. Now it's 45 days. And our idea here is that we're trying to speed up the whole process. And then eventually the next step is speed it up for those that are applying for it but haven't been working out of other states and they're applying for a new license here. This whole thing is about speeding up the process and getting people to work faster, which gets to what we talked about before, is building our workforce in Kansas, getting people so they can, provide for their families. And then once we have this talented workforce, now we start to draw in more businesses and it starts feeding on itself. Then we got to change some of the other environments, and we'll get there. But that's kind of the concept here.
I like it. I like it. I like what you guys are doing there in the legislature. That's tremendous, all the way around. Yes. I mean, that with the gas that we were just talking about. Right. I've been city attorney many times, and so in a situation, if you're the city and we don't have the money to pay this would take our entire budget, and we don't even have the money available to be able to do it.
Right.
And so I think what you're doing with all of this is just making a tremendous difference.
It's not a giveaway. It's a low interest loan, and that city will be able to then kind of appropriate money every year to level out some of this big bill that they've got. But I still think there need to be an investigation on why these gas prices hike.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I don't understand why the prices must have skyrocketed, because the usage certainly increased during that period of time of the cold spell. Why did the price go up? Right. What seems like 8 times, 10 times?
And we have price gouging laws.
Good.
And I think that's probably a big gouge that they did to us, someone along the line. Somebody may have gotten rich out of it.
Yeah.
And then we need to identify those folks.
All right.
So, yeah. But other than that, I was going to mention on this note, a couple of years ago I talked to Chief Justice Ness, because I had an attorney that was a reviser that married a military member, then went to Colorado, and she had contacted me because in Colorado she was able to get a license to practice law. Now, as you well know, the Supreme Court handles all the licensing of attorneys. So I think the new Chief Justice is very receptive and maybe working on that if a military member comes into the state, their spouse is an attorney in good standing with whatever bar that she practiced in front of and passed, then they could give them a temporary permit. So that would be helpful.
Yeah, that would be tremendous.
And that's kind of an example we're talking about, because attorneys aren't under this bill for me. Right. But it's how it's infecting other things, and that's how you're going. Hey, sir, you talked also about another bill. We talked about social studies.
Oh, yeah. Talk about that.
Well, I mean,
you and I both agree.
Yeah. Well,
it's a civics test. It's
civics test, yes.
Right. It's a civics test where high school students that need this to graduate, and they must pass a test, a civics test, which is the same test that immigrants who want to get United States citizenship has to take. It's 120 questions. They're only going to pick out 40 to give the high school students. And Doug, what do you think about that?
I like it, but of course I have a history degree and taught.
That's what I knew. I knew that. But when I went through high school, everybody understood and took civics. We understand the 3 branches of government, how things. I remember one of the classes was how a bill became law at federal level. It's very complicated, but it can be taught. But teachers and educators came out against this bill.
I can't imagine.
I can't.
You watch sometimes where on one of the shows you'll see where, just somebody's out at the Waters World, something
Right.
like that, and he'll ask people, who was in World War II? What were the sides? Don't have a clue.
Yeah.
Right.
When did Lincoln serve as president? No clue.
Yeah.
No clue. We got to cut away, take a break.
Sure.
We'll be right back. You're watching Legislative Updates. And welcome back to our final segment of this show for Legislative Updates, and thank you for watching, and we appreciate it, and glad to be able to share the information with you. And as you know, on your left is John Barker, 70th District. John's in his 5th term and represents this district, and in between us is Chris Croft from the 8th District out of Overland Park. And Chris, thank you for taking time to stop in and share this information. I'll tell you, it's really interesting to hear all of this and to keep up with it. Next week, we'll be doing legislative updates, and Blaine Finch from Speaker Pro Tem from the 59th District
Right.
will be with us. And he is from Ottawa, so there you
That's
go.
exactly right. He is from Ottawa.
Thanks for watching. See you next time.